Yes, you're still watching Power Breakfast on Citizen TV, and it's time for us to take a look at the headlines this morning. And as you can see, I have a panel here. And next to me, we have Wambui, Aspirant Women Representative, Nairobi County, Karibu Sana, and Rosa, Buyu, Deputy Organizing Secretary, ODM, and also Aspirant for the Kisumu Women Rep position.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Now, a quick look at the headlines, of course. Jubilee to lock out 2017 candidates from party posts. Jubilee is still making headlines, but down there you see Raila accuses Jubilee of a betting graft. Of course, the opposition chief is still on his week-long tour of Kakamega County. On the Standard, Uhuru Ruto lock out politicians from posts. And down there again, ODM mega bash to counter Jubilee set for Coast this weekend. Now we'll discuss these headlines, especially those ones, those to do with politics, a bit later on the show. But first, we'd like to start with a story on the back page of the Daily Nation. Millions lost in unused Rio rooms for Uhuru and Wario. And we do understand that millions of shillings went to waste in Brazil when the Olympics Committee paid for expensive rooms for the president and sports cabinet secretary that were not even used. To the tune of 2.1 million shillings for a room set aside for the president, yet the president had clearly said he's not going to travel there. But apparently these rooms had been booked a year in advance. Now, this is when the rot and really what happened in Rio, the kind of expenditure, the kind of wastage of public resources we can see now, because we even understand that even they paid for rooms to accommodate the chairman of the Labour and Sports Committees of both the Senate and the National Assembly. Yet, this same committee, especially the one led by David Were from the National Assembly, did travel to Rio, but their accommodation was paid by Parliament. Now, this is what is coming out, and Hassan Wario, because this is taxpayers' money, Hassan Wario was there, and he couldn't defend himself.
And Demoli, that doesn't shock me. I'll say it doesn't shock me because since Jubilee came to power in 2013, they are on a spending spree. They have absolutely total disregard of where money is spent, how money is spent, and how much is spent. In total disregard of exactly how poor people of this country are. 51% of our population actually live below poverty line, meaning they can hardly afford a meal a day. Yet when Jubilee, who is entrusted with the funds, with the taxpayers' money, spends money without caring how it's spent and what value we get out of any expenditure, really, is it a government that should be trusted with the people's money?
Is the problem systemic? Is it just government procedures to procure a room for the president a year in advance, whether or not he uses it?
We should not specifically or just narrow it down to saying that the Jubilee government, because we have the committee that is supposed to be looking into these things in Parliament, and this committee is constituted also with members of Parliament from the political divide code. So we are just looking at the legislators that we have in Parliament, and we are wondering, are they really doing their work properly, despite the fact whether they are from Jubilee or whether they are from COD. So for me, what I can say is someone is not working, and the CS for sports should actually come out clean and say why were they doing this. Well, the people who are participating, we understand that they went to Rio and were stranded and they were mistreated, and to a point that they got very, very bad hotel rooms where they were staying. They did not even get enough food. So it's such a disappointment of the people that we are bringing into power, and they're actually not, they're letting down the government we have in place, because the president and the deputy president will not come and actually do their work for people. And that is why I am appealing to Kenya. Next time you are looking for leaders, you're looking for members of Parliament, look for workers, people who have not putting the self-interest first, because we are looking at both COD and Jubilee members of Parliament traveled to go to Rio. So you cannot just say specifically it is because if you are in opposition and you want to correct the government, then you should not be part of when they're doing wrong, when and how they're doing it wrong. So you should actually stand out strong and defend the common mwananchi.
I think when you're talking about government, the CSs and the PSs are appointed by the president of this country. The PS is the accounting officer of this ministry. So he must have a keen eye on how much or how the taxpayers' money is spent. That is the mandate that has been given on behalf of all Kenyans. So you will not tell me that CORD MPs who are in that committee, Jubilee MPs who are in that committee takes over the responsibility of the PS. These are people who legislate, but the PS is the one given that mandate to actually see how the money, the taxpayers' money is spent within his ministry. So they take the blame. And you see it across all the time. You will find that money is spent and nobody cares even to know what value we get out of the expenditure that we make. And that is something that Jubilee has kept on doing ever since 2013.
I have to come out strong and defend the CS because I'm thinking, Wario, if he came out and told the members of parliament to go, he would have overstepped his mandate because the money that the members of parliament traveled with came from parliament. It actually did not come from the ministry. So, it actually did not come from the ministry.
No.
Because the problem here is that the ministry, through the National Olympics Committee, actually paid for rooms for two chairmen from Parliament for the Labour Committee, Labour and Sports Committees of both the Senate and National Assembly. Surely they must have known that Parliament will do the same.
Will do the same. But what I'm getting to is, this is a problem that is collective, starting from the CS, and also we can actually not nail it down to the government that we have in power, because even members who have been elected to go to parliament, they should actually be rectifying these issues. They should be pinning out the problems and saying you are because their role also is oversight. As much as legislation, they have all oversight bit. They should have gone to a Rio and said you should not be using this much money for people who are adding no value in Rio to travel. So what you should do is cut down the numbers. Let us treat our athletes very well, so that when they get there, we boost their morale, and also they feel that Kenya is appreciating what they're doing. They're bringing glory to us instead of people traveling there and going. I am agreeing the fact that what they did was very wrong, but we cannot pin it down on the government. Okay. Yes.
For now, let's take a look at this report by Waihiga Mwaura. Then we'll be back and discuss this a lot more.
That statement, made on the 22nd of July 2016 at State House in Nairobi, silenced any speculation among sports stakeholders on whether the president would travel to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, or not. But the matter arose at County Hall, Nairobi this afternoon when the Kenyan chef de mission in Rio de Janeiro, Stephen Soy, told the Parliamentary Labour and Social Welfare Committee that the country paid 2.1 million Kenyan shillings for 2 rooms on a cruise ship for the president and his team.
The direction that I was given was, you leave 1 room in the cruise ship in the event that the head of state decides to come to Rio. Second, yes, we were paying $605 for 18 days. Yes, 605 per day, bed and breakfast.
Citizen TV could not authoritatively confirm the name of the ship, but Western media houses such as USA Today and the Daily Mail revealed that a 4,000 capacity passenger ship, dubbed the Norwegian Gateway, docked in Rio de Janeiro during the period of the Olympics to host International Olympic Committee members, National Olympic Committees, and special high-profile guests.
Any accommodation you need, you have to pay in advance. When we had steering committee meeting, we gave them the requirement of what is needed in Rio, and we need money. Then we were not given money. The first money we pay, and we come and ask the ministry to give us our money back.
On why he traveled with his wife, Stephen Soy told the committee that she was traveling to celebrate his birthday with him and that he paid for the ticket and accommodation with his own money. There were also rooms booked for the 2 chairmen of the Senate and the National Assembly's Labour and Social Welfare Committees at the cost of 1.3 million Kenya shillings. Earlier in the day, Sports Cabinet Secretary Dr. Hassan Wario was also grilled, with the key sticking point being whether all the allowances had been paid to Team Kenya or not. Wario, together with his principal secretary, Richard Ekai, told the committee that all allowances had been paid, but Charanganyi Member of Parliament Wesley Korir disputed that.
And listen to the CS saying that all the athletes have been paid their allowance
And I'm receiving a text. No, Mr. Chair, let me bring that to the attention, because you cannot sit here and an athlete is being mistreated in the ministry, being sent away because they haven't received them.
I thought those are the issues that we raised, because...
But they didn't take care of that right now, Mr. Chair.
Here's the copy of our payment.
So you're claiming...
I signed the plan at Kuwait. According to our records, has been paid the money.
So you're claiming that the athlete is lying.
Yes, that's a story by Wahigawa Maura. And as we were discussing before, but just before that, sorry, we've just been joined by Esther Passaris, a social entrepreneur, philanthropist, politician, and also aspirant for the Nairobi governor's seat. Karibu sana.
Morning.
Morning. Just before the break, but just before we took that story, we were discussing the Rio fiasco and exactly what happened, and the revelation that came out yesterday that actually the National Olympics Committee paid for accommodation for the president to the tune of 2.1 million shillings that was actually never used. The president didn't travel.
Yeah, well, first of all, they should have had a confirmation from the president before they made the payment. Second thing, if they had a confirmation from the president and he didn't travel because something else came up, then somebody should have been given the use of that accommodation so that it doesn't become wasted, all right? Or the president's budget should refund the National Olympic Committee budget. Because at the end of the day, if it was allocated, it was supposed to be spent for the president, right? And he didn't show up, refund the money back to the National Olympic Committee. Yes,
and the argument is it a systemic problem within government procurement procedures and spending ways? Because they say they booked the room a year in advance. But just before the Olympics, and you saw when the story started, the president said, I won't be traveling to Brazil. Yet for 18 days, the room just had been paid for, no one used it.
Well, I guess they also booked a room for the deputy president separately.
The deputy president had a separate
accommodation. You know, I'll tell you one thing. Sometimes I think we're very rigid and we're always looking to fault something. All right? I mean, you have to book in advance for Rio. Let's face it, it's the Olympics. You're not going to find rooms a week before the event. So you have to balance it out. If the president wanted to go, but something else came out, we've had so many conferences going on, and he couldn't go, sometimes you have to have such losses. You have to incur such losses. But I mean, you can't forward plan to that extent, because you see, here is the President of the Republic. Here's the Kenyan team going to the Olympics. Let's be fair in all fairness. You cannot book the Rio Olympic accommodation 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month before the event. It has to be booked well in advance, and a year is probably how they plan it.
What would you say to this other revelation that the National Olympics Committee also paid for rooms for 2 chairmen of parliamentary committees, one from the Senate and one from the National Assembly, and the chairman of the National Assembly, David Were, chairman of the Labour and Sports Committee from the National Assembly, did travel to Rio, but did not even use that room that had been paid for by NOC.
Okay, the thing is, and then did he pay for his own room?
Parliament paid for his room.
Parliament paid for him. Okay, so this is again breakdown of communication.
Yes. So
you need one center.
That when it comes to government expenditure, we just spend, we don't really care to check.
You need one center of communication and management. And this we've seen since the government, the new constitution, even before when we had the Mkatenusu, you know, there were so many ministries that were overlapping in duties and functions, you know, with the county government or the councils. So I think we've always had this overlap because everybody wants a piece of the action.
So it is systemic.
But basically what I'm saying, I think we need to clean house and we need to do things differently, because the same ministry has been having issues. We've seen sportsmen traveling and then their tickets have not been booked on time. So it's just lack of management and it's lack of competence. So basically for me, what I can say, they need to clean their house. They need to start doing things differently, because they should have known that the president is not going, and probably they would have allocated that same room to somebody else so that it does not go to waste. But instead, so many people were traveling during that time, or maybe they would have switched it for the deputy president to use it, and maybe that amount of money, that's 2.2 million. I know, yes, they booked early. They must have booked early, but I'm sure when these athletes were trying to look for places to be housed, I'm sure even then they would have appreciated it. Instead of it going to waste, they should actually have...
for me is you need prudence in spending taxpayers' money.
Yes.
And prudence is what this government lacks, period.
Because they are the
Bottom line.
custodian of...
They are the custodian. They are the ones charged with that responsibility. They have that mandate on behalf of the Kenyan people, and what they need is prudence.
Okay.
You know, they have to understand that, I agree. Here you have a situation where, because it's pesa ya serikali, unaweza kutumia the way you want. It is not that way. I mean, government money is your taxpayers' money. All right? So it has to be used, you have to use it well. Okay, allocate it well and not just waste it. But I think we do have a lot of wasted resources in government, because whoever is signing, whoever's tendering is actually thinking there's a lot of money there. Now, I want people to understand that governments can go bankrupt. Government can actually go bankrupt. And you don't want to take Kenya to that situation. All right? So you have to watch and guard government expenditure. There are reasons why you have budgets, and and if you save on a budget, right, it's fantastic. Okay, you have more money for the next next year's budget. But to waste money, I think in a country that is still developing, and a country where we have a lot of poverty and a lot of resources needed for very basic requirements like water, like medical, like medicine, I think it is really wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on from that.